There's two chaps down there. The thing about pigeons is you can never persuade them to feed in a part of the field where they don't want to go. So you've always got to fit in with their arrangements rather than hope that they're going to fit in with yours. And the best hide is always one in the middle of the field, even if it means making a shallow grave for yourself to lie in, or using a telegraph pole or anything. Because obviously most of the danger, the hawks, could be in this cover here, in these bushes. So the birds, and the foxes of course, so the birds won't come too close. Because I'm in these bushes here, I'm having to shoot at fairly long range, unless of course they come and land on top of the trees here, which there aren't anymore yet. So the thing is, you've got to fit in with what they want to do. And if you fit in with what they want to do, then life is much easier. We've got birds coming to these decoys because this is where they prefer to feed. Although we haven't yet managed to bag one that's sitting out there because they've all been just a little bit too far away. But we'll get one soon. You don't need a great deal of equipment for this sort of shooting. Hunting with air rifles is simplicity itself. I use a Theoban Rapid 7, which is a 7-shot 2.2. I just pull the bolt back and load another pellet. I like a good scope which lets through a lot of light, like this Tasco 3 to 9. It's got a large front element. It's very good for low light shooting. In fact, the lower the light, the more I turn it down, right down to 3 power, especially for night shooting. Because the greater the magnification, the darker the image is in the viewfinder, which is there. It's got a nice silencer. Not that it makes a huge amount of difference, because the sound of a pellet hitting a rabbit's skull makes a great deal of noise, a very loud crack. And apart from that, just a tin of pellets, a couple of spare magazines, a knife, some string, a bit of netting for camouflage. Normally I use old trawl net, but I've got a bit of the real stuff today, because I guess that most people can't get hold of old trawl nets like I can. It's the advantage of living by the coast. I've got this rucksack seat here, which is quite a handy thing for taking bits and pieces around. Yeah, I put some tape over the legs of this rucksack seat just so they didn't glisten, because they're bright silver otherwise. And you don't really want anything that's going to attract attention to yourself in the hide. And my lofting poles, plastic decoys. I've got a flapper, little owl, a decoy little owl. When you pull the string, the wings flap. That's very handy in the spring when after magpies and crows, because you just put it near where they're nesting. And they don't like finding a crow in their they don't like finding a little owl in their territory. They get very excited. And whilst they're getting very excited, you can shoot them from a little hide or a cubby hole in the bushes, like I'm in now. No need always to make a proper hide. There's plenty supplied by nature. I don't carry a great deal of kit with me. I like to keep it simple. Only take what is absolutely necessary. The equipment isn't so important. The important thing is understanding a quarry species, knowing its habits, being able to read their body language and what they do at different times of the year and the different seasons. After all, a rifle is just a piece of machinery, a piece of kit. You get it, work out how to use it, then perfect your technique. It's just a tool like any other spanner. Somewhat expensive spanner, mine. Come on, pigeons, where are you? Over the last, 40 years, we've had a major upsurge of collared doves in this country. They only arrived in this country in 1953, and now they're found all throughout the land, from Land's End up to the Shetland Islands even. They're prolific breeders, breed all throughout the year, and they love farmyards where easy grain can be found, gardens, practically every garden's got a pair of collared doves in it, and you can shoot them throughout the year. They taste very good too, because they eat grain and everything that human beings eat, so they're good to eat themselves. And I always hunt them around farmyards, although of course you can get them on the stubbles at this time of year. But when the stubbles are all ploughed in, that's when they really pile into the farmyards, and you get hundreds and hundreds of them some places, and they make a real nuisance to themselves around the grain stores, and farmers do not like them at all. They're supposed to put their grain in silos and put nets over it to keep the doves out. That is a lot of inconvenience for them. So they don't always use them. They'd much prefer somebody to come along and shoot them with an air rifle. Because the thing about an air rifle, it's not going to frighten all the other animals on the farm, all the pigs and cattle and sheep and goats and chickens and all the rest. Some places, people have gone in there with shotguns and caused absolute mayhem and got the farmer very, very cross indeed. So the thing about an air gun is it's so good for quiet pest control. And you can use it for shooting feral pigeons inside buildings or collared doves inside barns, provided you make sure you've got a good backstop and you're not going to shoot through thin asbestos roofs and things like that. Although collared doves are pretty abundant around farms, they've got a fairly well developed sense of self-preservation, and they do realise when your intentions are no good. So you've got to stay fairly well hidden. The way I do it is to stalk around the place, taking the easy ones, which haven't realised that they're in trouble. And whilst I'm stalking around the place, I find out where they're feeding and which particular barns or cattle troughs or food stores or grain silos are of interest to them. This doesn't change a great deal, so once you've sussed out a farmyard, they're normally in pretty well the same place. The farmyards are by far the best places for them. And you always find them in farmyards which are surrounded by trees. You won't find them in places which have got no trees around, because that's where they nest, and they nest throughout the year. I found them sitting on eggs even when it's snowing. But when you've got a nice barn full of food nearby, you don't really have to worry about the seasons, do you? As the year progresses and the birds move on to different foodstuffs, they're on the stubbles here. They've got the hawthorn berries, and there's acorns, beech mast. But as it gets eaten and the fields get ploughed up, so they have to travel further to feed. And they start forming into fairly large flocks as they feed. Of course, they've got the oilseed rape, clover in some places. But what happens is they travel further and further and further to find food. But they come back to specific woods for their roosting. And although it's the wrong time of year, with all the leaf on the tree still, when those leaves are gone, you get some wonderful roost shooting. It's one of the best times for air gunning. Just go in, just as the sun's dipping down over the horizon, find your favourite little place to crouch at the bottom of a tree and just wait for the birds. And they'll come in, you'll get a flock of 150 come in, and all you hear is very soft of the wings above you. Then there'll be a little flicking of wingtips against branches, then absolute silence. There's 300 eyes are staring around them, looking to see where the danger is. That's when you very gingerly sneak the rifle into your shoulder, moving as slowly as possible, Obviously you've got to wear the gloves and the hat, so you're as invisible in the gloom as possible. And you've got to thread the pellet over one twig, under another, and smack into the back of the head of a woody. And what'll happen is, if there's a little bit of breeze blowing, just enough to make a bit of noise in the wood, the birds will just move from the area around where you just shot. They won't all scarper. So that leaves an open area where the next flock of birds will land. In some other woods, they come and alight right at the edge. And if you put... I just heard somebody alight in my tree. Sound of wings. Can't see it. The great thing about this business is listening for wings and watching for shadows going along the edge of the field. Yes, in some woods they alight right at the edge of the wood. And they all seem to try and crowd in the same tree, so that's where the lofting poles come in well. If you know the areas where they're likely to land, you can put up the lofting poles and just hide and wait for them. And in some places they'll all arrive right at the edge. And when they've sat there for about half an hour, maybe 3/4 of an hour, you'll get this amazing fluttering sound as they all flutter off through the trees looking for their favourite little roosting branches. But other woods are just pitching straight to where they're going to roost. And of course, later in the evening, you can shoot the silhouettes against the afterglow of the sunset. But if you want some really exciting shooting, and you've got a dog to help you retrieve the corpses, you can go out at night. But what you want is a bit of moon covered by a thin layer of cloud, so you get what they call a white sky. Not a black sky like when there's a brilliant full moon or starlit. You want a white sky with that little haze, little quilt of cloud, and the birds, so you can see them in clear silhouette through a decent scope. And you've got all the time in the world to look for the intervening twigs, settle the rifle, compose the shot, and whack it off its perch. Very exciting stuff. And in a big wood, all they'll do is fly 20, 50 yards and settle again. Often you can shoot a bird off one twig and another bird 5 yards away won't even move. Really exciting stuff. But you should take a dog with you, because when these birds fall into the gloom and all the undergrowth and bushes, it's not very easy to retrieve them. And you can do near enough the same with rooks and crows and jackdaws. Shooting them when they're coming into roost, they make an amazing amount of noise, and I think that's by far the best time to shoot them, as they're coming in. They always come into roost after the pigeons, so if you've got a pigeon roost and a short distance away you've got a crow roost, you can go from one to the other, because the pigeons always come in first and they're always tucked up in bed before the crows move. The crows are always the last to go to roost and the first to get up in the morning. I'm not so sure about shooting crows and rooks and jackdaws at night, although they're very easy because they just look like great big black blobs up on the branches. Once you shoot a few, it really does spook them, and they move off and find another roost. And then you've got to find them again. And they are actually quite hard to find on the roost. You've really got to know your wood, because they roost in pretty small areas. The only way you can find them, and well, the same applies to pigeons actually, the best way to find any type of roost, whether it's for crows or for wood pigeons, is to look for the shite on the floor of the wood. But you also find that where the pigeons roost, that's where the most dead leaves are, because that's obviously the most sheltered part, out of the wind. And And that was a pigeon which didn't take kindly to me chatting.